Good morning. Hope you're having a great day. So, in this week's Torah portion of Vayishlach, we read about Jacob leaving back to go home to the Holy Land of Israel after being gone for over 20 years. And the Torah tells us that when Jacob came, he pitched his tent in Shechem, and he bought a piece of the land there for Meya Ksita, which is 100 coins, about 500 shekel. And the rabbis tell us the simple reason why Jacob did that was because it was about Shabbos, and he had to pitch his tent. And although Jacob was returning to his father, Isaac lived in Hebron by now. Why would he buy a piece of land, a tiny little piece of land where his tent was pitched? In Shechem, he could have just Airbnb'd, or he could have just rented it. Why did he buy it? And the rabbis tell us, and Nachmanides elaborates on this, that Jacob had such a love for the Holy Land of Israel that the moment the first opportunity became for him to own land in Israel, the first chance he had to buy his own piece of parcel, he immediately bought it. And he bought it knowing that he won't dwell there. He was going to go to be by his father in Hebron, but he wanted to have a piece of land in Israel that he would own. That's how strong his love was. And he uses the word Meya Ksita, which means 100 coins, but it also means coins that were valuable, that were also exchanged as ornaments. And the reason for that is because Jacob wanted to show Chavivus Haaretz, the love for the land of Israel. There's a remarkable midrash that says like this, that there's 3 places in Israel that the nations of the world can never dispute and try to say the Jews stole it. One of the pieces of land is Cave of Machpelah, which Abraham buys in Hebron. The second piece of land, he buys it from Ephron. The second piece of land is what King David buys in Temple Mount, Jerusalem, which he buys from the Jebusites. And the third piece of land, he buys it from Arnon. And the third piece of land is the piece of land that Jacob buys in Shechem. Now, ironically, these 3 places are the 3 most disputed places in the land of Israel. Shechem represents Samaria. Hebron represents Judea. And Jerusalem represents Temple Mount, the most disputed areas. And why are they so disputed? Why do the nations of the world and the Arab nations constantly dispute these places? And the Rebbe says in one of his talks that because they know that that's our most legitimate claim to the land. And they feel that if they could take away those pieces of land from the Jewish people, then they'll be able to take away our claim to the land. And that's why they fight it. And that's why it's so cherished as a Jew to be able to be in Judea, Samaria, and Jerusalem, the old city. And the truth is that in all the times that I went to Israel, there was never a more special time than roaming the hills of Judea, Samaria, and letting the Bible come alive. Abraham, Sarah, Rebecca, Isaac, Leah, Rachel, Jacob, Joseph, and so on. Because when we read about these remarkable places, that's the greatest connection the Jewish person has to the land of Israel. And Jacob inherited within us that we should feel that love for the land that he felt by him buying the moment he could. That was the first entry point for him, was Shechem, where he rested right away and he immediately bought a piece of land. People always say to me, Rabbi, how do we instill that our children love the land of Israel? And the answer is, if we love it and we're ready to give up for it, and we're ready to compromise, and we're ready to sacrifice, just like Jacob did, then our children were. You know, if you go right outside of the old city in Jerusalem, there's a very old neighborhood called Barel Horstein. Barel Horstein today is part of the Geula. But the story goes that it was built in 1908 by a sugar magnate from Ukraine, from a place called Radomshil, which was in western Zhytomyr of Ukraine. of Ukraine. And what happened? This man, 1908, 1908, 1908, 1908, 1908, 1908, 1908, 1908, 1908, 1908, 1908, 1908, 1908, 1908, 1908, 1908, 1908, 1908, 1908, 1908, 1908, 1908, 1908, 1908, 1908, 1908, 1908, 1908, 1908, 1908, 1908, 1908, 1908, 1908, 1908, 1908, 1908, 1908, 1908, 1908, 1908, 1908, 1908, 1908, 1908, 1908, 1908, 1908, 1908, 1908, 1908, 1908, 1908, 1908, 1908, 1908, 1908, 1908, 1908, 1908, 1908, 1908, 1908, 1908, 1908, 1908, 1908, 1908, 1908, 1908, 1908, 1908, 1908, 1908, 1908, 1908, 1908, 1908, 1908, 1908, 1908, 1908, 1908, 1908, 1908, 1908, 1908, 1908, 1908, lived in Ukraine. He came in 1908 and took all his wealth to build this community of Barel Horstein that has about 30 homes and a communal mikvah and some other things. Today it's part of the Geula resident neighborhood. And he hired a company, Cohen Builders, that were all Jewish people. They built it. It was ready in 1912. And he got to see it till 1918 when he passed away. But what happened? What brought him there? And the story is a remarkable story. The guy's name was Barel Horstein. And he lived, as I said, in Adom Shul. And one day, he was a very wealthy man, and someone came into his office and said, Rabbi, I need to marry off my daughter, and I don't have the money. Not Rabbi, he said, Barel. And Barel says to him, okay, tell me how much it's going to cost. And the guy makes a calculation of everything that it's going to cost, and he tells him, and it's a huge sum of money. But Barel Horstein was a very generous man, and he said, I'll make a deal with you. I'll pay for the entire wedding on condition that you invite me to the wedding. Of course, man obliges. And he said, of course I'll do that. Well, guess what? He got busy preparing for the wedding. And if he got to invite Barel, the day of the wedding comes, the chuppah, they break the glass. And then he realizes that he forgot to invite the man who made it all possible. Now let's pause. At this same time, Barel is sitting in his house, alone, and suddenly bandits break into the house. And they tie up Barel and his family. They collect all the jewelry and silver and gold. And they tell them, we're about ready to kill you. Now we're going to kill you. And Barel makes a promise in his mind. He says, Almighty God, if you save me from these bandits, I will sell my entire possession and move to the Holy Land of Israel and help build a Jewish community. At that moment, at the chuppah, the bride's father looks at the groom's father and he tells him the story. Listen, there's a guy who paid for the whole wedding. I forgot to invite him. I want to go now. I have to go apologize to him and invite him. At least let him come for the feast. The groom's father agrees, says, I'm coming with you. Suddenly the word gets out. All the guests start coming. The band starts coming. And there you have hundreds of people in a band marching towards Barel's home. Barel is tied up, ready to be killed. Suddenly the bandits hear the commotion and they're convinced that it's the Russian army and they start fleeing. But they flee into the hands of the wedding guests who catch them and deliver them to the police. They come into the house, they see Barel and his family shockingly tied up. They untie them and Barel and his family come to the wedding. After he apologized, they come to the wedding. At the wedding, it's a double wedding. The bride and groom are getting married, but also Barel was saved. That next day, Barel began by selling and liquidating his whole empire, moving to Israel to invest all his money to have Jewish workers build the Horstein community, which is there till today. He got the merit to see it for 6 years, but if you go there today, it is still there. That's the story of the love of the land that Jacob taught us. Jacob taught us to love Israel, to embrace Israel. The first moment he bought a piece of land. He paid with special coins that were also ornaments, and that's why he uses the word kesita to show us his love for the land of Israel. May we all love the land and inspire our children to do the same. Have a great day.